Let's start with a leadership story. You know, last year I published a book with a common friend of ours, Maria Victoria Riaño. She was one of the few women CEO of an oil company in the world, which is, you know, something that's really groundbreaking, I think. Throughout the research interviews, I had a conversation with a young engineer that, you know, defined how Vicky and the company actually changed his life. He said, you know, her leadership style and the company itself is like a mother. And I said, how do you mean? A mother is like demanding, but is also caring. So that's the amazing balance of, you know, and from that, he mentioned that here at the company, we are all leaders. So that's actually ended up becoming the title of the book, Todos somos líderes, no? We are all leaders, in a way to actually reflect that we have to take ownership of this personal journey. And the dimension of leadership will vary depending on how much responsibility you have under your belt. And one of the amazing stories that we share in the field guide is the story from Ramon Mendiola, the FIFCO CEO, that talks about you know, a big change on how his leadership actually changed the organization. And I just wanted to bring back that conversation because that is a great example, and that's on the CEO, the letter from the CEO, you know, Ramon's message. Can you share a bit on that story?
On Ramon's story or
on Ramon's story from, you know.
Yeah, so Ramon came into the leadership at FIFCO, which is a company, the largest company in Costa Rica, and I think he had worked in tobacco, and he had worked in craft or some other company before that, right? So he was, and then he came into this company that produces soft drinks and beer, and they have some resorts as well. His original, you know, focus was more of a traditional MBA educated, leader. It was about fixing the business, about growing and so forth. But then over time, he started to have these realizations about the so-called footprints, that the externalities, the consequences of this kind of a business on society. And the health minister of the company was always criticizing FIFCO to say, you guys are causing obesity, which is a huge problem in many countries, especially in Latin America, with the consumption of soft drinks and other things. There is also a problem of drunk driving and binge drinking and all of those kinds of things, right? And so instead of trying to hold those forces away, Ramon actually embraced those challenges. He said, okay, let's see how we can improve, right? So they started to work on reducing their footprint, first of all, in terms of obesity. They reduced the sugar content in about 150 products by 50% over a period of a few months. And they did it without telling their customers. And gradually people got used to the new taste. So they cut sugar, they took it out of schools and so forth. They put healthier products in there, right? So they really responded to that. With the drinking, they started an education program to get people not to drink in excess, right? To drink in moderation, to spread out their drinking over multiple days if they do choose to drink, etc. So again, they paid attention, but they also then started to realize that they have other footprints, right? The carbon, the water, the solid waste, all of those kinds of things, and ultimately made a commitment to be a triple bottom line company, right? To make sure that people, planet, and the and profits are all served at the same time, and set very ambitious goals very publicly. He would say, we're going to become a carbon neutral company by this date, right?
Yeah.
Become water neutral by this date, etc. And then they achieve those goals. And then they say, we're going to become carbon positive or water positive. In other words, we'll have a net positive effect. So they, in fact, now have the world's first water positive beer. It's called Imperial. The net effect of this beer is actually they're not reducing, but actually expanding water resources where they operate. Right? So they did all of these things. And along the way, he also embraced the idea of purpose, right? And they created a very compelling purpose for the company. They also became a healing organization. They recognized that about 330 families of employees that were in the company were well paid, actually. In Costa Rica, they're the best paying company. But they had fallen back into extreme poverty or into poverty because of some purchases that they had made or other things that they had happened, financial decisions that they had taken. And so when that was pointed out to Ramon, he said, okay, give me 18 months, we'll fix this problem. So they worked with each one of those families and helped them through the immediate crisis, but also then educated them about financial literacy and other things, and really got their lives back on track. So there's a commitment to every last individual. There's a commitment to having a positive impact in the world. It has grown literally 10 times under his leadership in terms of revenues, right? And is one of the world's now leading companies in terms of investments in these. They spend 7% of their profits on these social and environmental issues, and yet they are highly, highly profitable, right? So it's a company that has gone on the full journey from being a traditional, not even very profitable, kind of a small, little struggling company making negative impacts in the world, to a company that is much larger and making positive impacts on people's lives and on society and on the planet.
I think this is such an amazing story, because we talk about leadership at the end of the book or at the last part of the book, and the whole change starts with leadership.
Yeah.
Although that's the last chapter, it is the first change that needs to happen, right? Yeah. And we can see that leaders, traditional leaders, have actually upgraded their style, their life, their perspective, updated like we update our purpose to the changing environment, to the changing world, and leaders are doing this. And one of the things that I see, and I want to go into that, our acronym for leadership. Simon Sinek, on his book Leaders Eat Last, talks a lot about caring leadership. You know, how do we care? Because if we care for people, people will care for whatever business we have, for our purpose, for our stakeholders, right? How does that connect with the acronym, the selfless acronym on leadership?
Yeah, it's deeply connected, because the word selfless is the opposite of selfish. Right? Now, you cannot be a selfish human being and call yourself a leader, because that means you're going to use the people you lead as a way to achieve your personal goals. Now, that is the definition of a tyrant. That is not a leader. A true leader is there to take people to a better place, to elevate their existence, to create a vision for what is possible and a strategy for how do we get there, right? Lifting everybody along the way. So you have to, as a leader, be about more than yourself. You cannot be focused inwardly. You're focused on service, right? So servant leadership is another similar idea to conscious leadership, right? You have to go beyond. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the top of that is self-actualization, right? Becoming who you are meant to be and all that, which is great. Yeah. But that's not the end of the journey. Viktor Frankl said there's a level beyond that, which is self-transcendence, right? It's like you first find yourself and then you lose yourself. You lose yourself in service to the larger collective, the larger self that all of us are part of, right? So we have to get to that place of self-transcendence. It's not just about me. You know, when John Mackey gave up his salary in 2007 and make it $1 a year from that point on, that was a selfless act in many ways, right? And because, you know, he had enough. He said, I've got enough to live uncomfortably and do everything I ever want to do, right? So he wasn't consumed by greed and more and more and more, right? That kind of idea. So again, it's about service. It's about elevating all the people that we lead, right? Having a positive impact, because we know that is the deepest source of fulfillment and happiness and satisfaction for human beings, ultimately. Yeah. It's having a positive impact on others in the world, right? Unless you're a sociopath or psychopath or whatever. You know? Unfortunately, we have a good number of those in leadership in the world today. Yes. Right? But for most humans, that is what ultimately is the most meaningful thing. And selfless, of course, then stands for the qualities, right? So you have to be strong. Yeah. You have to have moral courage and personal power. The courage to do the right thing even when it's hard. And personal power is not just the power you get from having your title or your position. There are many people, you take away their title, it's like a balloon, you take out all the air, there's nothing left. Yeah. But other people have tremendous power coming from within, right? If you look at Gandhi and, you know, you look at Mother Teresa and even Greta and Malala and all, there's no position. They just have this personal power coming from within. So you have to have that kind of strength and power. You have to have energy and enthusiasm, right? And when you're connected to your purpose, that's a deep source of energy. You have to be rooted in love, right? You have to come from love. And again, strength and love are necessary together. Strength without love is tyranny. Love without strength is often ineffective, right? So as Martin Luther King said, we must be tough-minded and tender-hearted. And in a way that brings in the masculine and feminine energy as well, right? And then fourth is flexibility. You have to show up in the right way, in the right every situation, not as always with the same approach. And then a long-term orientation, going beyond your tenure as a leader, even beyond your lifetime, thinking about the long-term consequences. And then 3 kinds of intelligence: emotional, systems, and spiritual intelligence. You know, we are born with a certain level of IQ, and it cannot really increase, it can only go down. But these other kinds of intelligence we can cultivate, and we can grow them 10 times, 100 times. You know what we are. They ultimately matter more, right? So those are the qualities of conscious leaders.
But it's nice because it's such a broad and comprehensive approach, because John on his book brings, the challenge of the leadership journey, love, and brings the word love very strongly into the corporate world. And it is already in the field guide for so long. It has been reported maybe in a softer way at firms of endearment, and is bringing a much stronger presence moving forward. I still see what we have in the field guide as something that is so much broader than different initiatives. They all add up to what we are proposing. How can we invite more people to this journey from the leadership's perspective? Say, what's the invitation there?
Well, to me,
let me go even further, because I know you're releasing a new book, Awaken, and I think there's a next acronym, which is the great invitation for leadership change, for that journey. That I think this what will actually add to this part of the book for the field guide. So I would like to explore and have you share that with us, because I want people after this one to actually dive into something deeper, to the personal journey. So what's next? What does Awaken bring to the world?
Yeah, so it is about the personal journey. The leader you are is the person you are, right? So becoming a conscious leader means becoming a conscious human being first. And so what does that mean? That's the exploration that I set out to undertake in this book, which is the most personal book I've ever written. It really weaves in the story of my life and everything that I've learned personally, as well as in my work. And the subtitle is The Path to Purpose, Inner Peace, and Healing. And I think those are things that all human beings ultimately have to confront, right? How do we discover our purpose? How do we attain inner peace? How do we heal? Most of us carry a lot of wounds, and we have experienced trauma in our lives. Our families have trauma, our ancestors, all of that is affecting us. There's trauma in the world, right? So if you don't heal from that, then we end up inflicting suffering on others, right? All the leaders who do terrible things in the world really have a wounded inner child inside them, right? They say, men are at war with each other because they are at war with themselves, right? So there's that inner war that's going on because we're not healed. So a big part of that is how do we get to those steps? So in the book, I have 7 steps, which is number 1 is know yourself. You have to know who you are, right? Separate from your identity, your titles and your religion and your profession and all that. So who are you as a human, as a living being, right? What's your essence? You have to love yourself. Right? A lot of people know themselves, but they hate themselves, right? For many reasons, right? So getting to a place of loving yourself, accepting and loving yourself, and then being yourself. You have to be authentic to who you are. You cannot be acting and pretending to be somebody else. And then choosing your life. Everything that happened to you in the past, you cannot change it, but if you choose it and say, okay, this is what enabled me to grow and become the person I am, etc. So you don't become a victim, right? You become a learner. And you grow from all of the hard experiences that you may have had. And then express yourself. Bring your unique contribution into the world through your work. Right? And then become whole is the next step. Wholeness, we are all fragmented within. As I said, we have an inner woman and an inner man. Carl Jung said, every man has an inner woman, every woman has an inner man. So it's integrating the different sides of us. The masculine and feminine energy, and then the elder and the child energy. I talk about the, so you become what we call the wise fool of tough love. You have the wisdom of the elder, you have the playfulness and joy and innocence of the child. You've got the strength and toughness, of a strong father, and the love and compassion and inclusiveness of the mother. So all of that can be present in each of us. We can manifest all of that, ourselves. And then the last is heal yourself, right? And heal your story, heal your past, right? And heal the wounds and traumas that we all carry. And I share a lot about my own journey in that regard. What were the wounds and traumas that I had? And one of the experiences that I have, and that's where I think the acronym that you're referring to came, was in the Ecuadorian rainforest with some shamans. And I had an ayahuasca journey, and I had gone there to learn about healing and about business and about leadership. And the message that I got, one of several messages, was that this is what the world needs in order to heal. This is what we all need in order to heal, and that is love, innocence, simplicity, and truth. And so that acronym is the LIST. Right? That everything we do, every action we undertake in our life should come from love. Not anger, not jealousy, not fear, not greed, not bitter. Many people make decisions for those reasons, right? But every action, every decision should come from love. Innocence. We're all born innocent, then we get corrupted by the ways of the world. Right? And most of us, we don't have a choice when we're young, right? But as you become an adult, you have a choice. You can choose to live with innocence, go back to that state of innocence, right? Which means you don't knowingly cause harm to anybody else. Simplicity. We complicate everything way too much. The most important things in life are simple, right? So keep an eye on that. And last is truth. Truth is the most fundamental value. Right? And yet, what is our commitment to the truth in business and in politics? Right? It's all, we just make up whatever we want to make up. Truth is more important than peace, even, because without truth, there can be no peace. In South Africa, they had to have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission after apartheid, because if you don't have truth, you can't reconcile. So that means you haven't acknowledged what actually happened, right? So again, to me, that was a gift that came through me. How can we heal ourselves and live by the list? I think that is something for all leaders and everybody really to aspire to.
Oh, excellent. I think this conversation hopefully, brings even more energy for those reading the field guide, going through the exercise, the experiment, the upgrade, the change on their business, on their lives, and on the lives of everyone they touch, and allowing the businesses to become, more conscious and bringing more healing to the world. Thank you so much, Raj.
Well, thank you, Thomas, and thank you for your partnership and all of your entrepreneurial energy and initiatives that you bring to the world.
Excellent.